The transport bay doors hissed open, and Kira stepped through with movements that felt disconnected from her body. Her violet skin had dulled to an ashen shade, and her secondary arms hung limp at her sides. The bustle of the orbital station continued around her, oblivious to the fact that her world had just shattered. She had nowhere to go. Her quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel felt too empty, too full of the communication device that had delivered the news. Her mother was gone. Heart failure, they said. Sudden. Painless. The words meant nothing. Her feet carried her through the corridors without conscious direction, past the commercial district where merchants hawked goods from 100 worlds, past the recreation zones where laughter echoed inappropriately loud, past everything until she found herself in the residential wing reserved for the humans. The humans. Strange creatures from a death world, they called it. Earth, a planet that tried to kill its inhabitants in countless ways, yet somehow produced beings of remarkable gentleness. Kira had worked alongside several during the recent trade negotiations. One in particular had struck her as different. She stood before his door now, though she could not remember deciding to come here. Her primary hand rose and touched the chime panel. The soft tone sounded, and she waited, suddenly aware of how inappropriate this was. She barely knew him. They had shared perhaps a dozen conversations, most about cargo manifests and docking procedures. The door slid open. Marcus stood there in casual clothing, his brown hair disheveled as if she had woken him. His eyes, that peculiar human shade between brown and green, widened with surprise, then immediately softened with concern. "Kira?" His voice carried that warm quality that human voices possessed, something her people's linguists still struggled to replicate. "What's wrong?" The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "My mother died today. Can I spend the day with you, human?" She expected hesitation, confusion, perhaps a polite refusal with an excuse about prior obligations. Humans valued their privacy, she knew. Instead, Marcus stepped back and opened the door wider. "You can stay forever," he replied. The simple statement, delivered without drama or flourish, broke something inside her. Her legs buckled, and suddenly his arms were around her, supporting her weight as if it were nothing. He guided her inside, and the door whispered shut behind them. His quarters were smaller than hers, decorated with odd items from Earth. A plant in a ceramic pot, photographs printed on actual paper showing landscapes and people, a worn book with a cracked spine resting on a small table. The space smelled faintly of something called coffee and another scent she could not identify but found comforting. Marcus helped her to a cushioned seat designed for human proportions. It felt strange, but not uncomfortable. He disappeared briefly and returned with a cup of steaming liquid that he pressed gently into her primary hands. "Tea," he explained. "It helps. Or so my grandmother always claimed." Kira sipped it automatically. The warmth spread through her, and the subtle flavors distracted her mind for a precious moment. Marcus sat across from her, not speaking, simply present. The silence felt natural rather than awkward. "I should not have come here," Kira said finally. "We barely know each other. This is inappropriate." "Grief makes its own rules," Marcus replied. "And sometimes strangers are easier than friends. Less history, fewer expectations." She looked at him, really looked at him. His face held an openness that her people rarely displayed. Humans wore their emotions so plainly, something many species found unsettling. Kira had always found it refreshing. "Tell me about her," Marcus said. "If you want to." And Kira did. The words flowed like water, finding a path downhill. She spoke of her mother's laugh, bright and frequent, of how she had encouraged Kira to join the diplomatic corps, even when it meant traveling far from their homeworld, of the way she could settle any dispute with patient wisdom and well-chosen words, of the garden she kept, growing plants from a dozen different worlds, coaxing them to thrive together through sheer determination and care. Marcus listened without interrupting. He did not offer platitudes or try to diminish her pain with reassurances that everything would be fine. He simply listened, his full attention a gift more valuable than any words. Hours passed. The artificial day cycle of the station moved from morning to afternoon. Marcus made simple food, nothing fancy, just warm and filling. Kira ate without tasting, but her body needed the fuel. He put on quiet music, human compositions that relied heavily on string instruments. The melodies carried a melancholy beauty that matched her mood. At one point, Kira found herself crying again, though she had thought herself emptied of tears. Marcus moved to sit beside her, not touching unless she initiated it, just close enough that she could feel his presence. When she leaned against him, his arm came around her shoulders, solid and steady. "My father died when I was 16, Marcus said quietly. "Heart attack." He was laughing at something my sister said, and then he just stopped. Gone before he hit the floor. Kira turned to look at him. His eyes were distant, focused on memory. "Everyone kept telling me it would get better. That time heals all wounds." I wanted to scream at them. His jaw tightened. "It does get better, eventually, but not in the way they meant. The wound does not heal. You just get stronger around it. You learn to carry it." "I do not feel strong," Kira whispered. "You walked through a station full of thousands of beings while your heart was breaking. You kept breathing even though part of you wanted to stop. You asked for help." He met her eyes. "That's the strongest thing anyone can do." The station's evening cycle began, lights dimming to simulate sunset. Marcus moved around the quarters, preparing the space for rest. He offered Kira his sleeping area while he would take the couch. She protested weakly, but he was immovable on the point. "My mother would reach through death itself to hit me if I made a grieving guest sleep on the couch," he said with a small smile. Kira managed a weak laugh, the first in what felt like years. "She sounds formidable." "She is. Remind me to introduce you sometime." The casual assumption that they would know each other in the future, that this was not just a single day of charity, settled over Kira like a blanket. She realized with surprise that she wanted that. Wanted to know this human who had opened his home without question, who sat with her pain without trying to fix it. She lay in the unfamiliar bed, surrounded by the subtle signs of Marcus's life. A photograph on the side table showed him with a group of other humans, all smiling. A book about Earth's oceans sat half-read nearby. Everything spoke of a person who valued connection, who collected memories and knowledge with equal care. Sleep should have been impossible, but exhaustion claimed her. She dreamed of her mother's garden, but in the dream, Marcus was there too, helping to tend the plants with careful hands. Morning came too soon, and not soon enough. Kira woke to the smell of food cooking. She found Marcus in the small kitchen area, preparing breakfast with the same quiet competence he seemed to apply to everything. "I have to report for duty soon," he said apologetically. "But you can stay here as long as you need." "I will be back this evening." "I should return to my own quarters," Kira began, but he shook his head. "You can. Or you can stay. The door will recognize you now. I added you to the access list." He paused, meeting her eyes. "I meant what I said. Forever, if you need it." Kira felt tears threaten again, but these were different, warmer. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do this for someone you barely know?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "Because someone did it for me once. When my father died, a neighbor I had spoken to maybe twice let me sit in her garden for hours. She never asked questions, never demanded anything. She just let me exist in my grief without judgment. He smiled slightly. And because you're not someone I barely know anymore. Not after yesterday. He was right, Kira realized. In the span of a day, sharing grief and stories in silence, they had built something. Not friendship exactly, not yet. Something more fundamental. Connection. Understanding. I will stay today, she said. If the offer stands, it stands. It will stand tomorrow too, and the day after that. After Marcus left for his shift, Kira found herself exploring his quarters more thoroughly. Not snooping, just observing. Each item told a story. The plant was from Earth, a species called bamboo, known for flexibility and resilience. The photographs showed a large family, multiple generations gathered together. The books covered topics from stellar mechanics to ancient human poetry. She picked up one slim volume, its pages worn soft with repeated reading. The title translated roughly as Meditations on Loss and Continuance. Inside, someone had written notes in the margins, questions and reflections in Marcus's handwriting. She read a few passages, finding comfort in the way humans throughout their history had grappled with the same pain she felt now. The day passed more easily than the one before. Kira contacted her superiors, requesting personal leave. She sent messages to family, accepting their condolences and deflecting their concerns. She sat with her grief, but it no longer threatened to drown her. When Marcus returned that evening, he found her tending his bamboo plant, following instructions from a video she had found. It was looking thirsty, she explained. He smiled, and it reached his eyes. Thank you. They prepared